Hi everyone, it's Nishi here from N Accounting. Hope you're having a great day. So in today's video, what I want to talk about is how to fix your business's cash flow problems in 5 steps. So one thing I'll say though is the title of this video is not how to fix your business's cash flow problems in 5 easy steps, because generally fixing cash flow problems in a business aren't the easiest thing to do, but it's something you've got to do if you want your business to survive. Let's talk about why cash flow is important in business just really quickly. Well, you need cash flow to pay for stuff. So if you can't pay for stuff, then people won't work for you, suppliers won't supply you with stuff. And if you can't do that, then you can't really look after your customers. So cash flow is a really important thing. And let's quickly talk about the difference between cash flow and profit. I'll do a whole different video on this, but profitability is taking a longer term view of a transaction. You might say, okay, well, someone's going to pay me X amount and it's going to cost me this amount to actually fulfill that. And you'd be like, okay, I'm going to make a profit. That's great. But what that statement doesn't factor in is actually sometimes you might have to pay out lots of money before you get any in. And because businesses do that a lot, things can get really complicated, and there are times they can run out of cash. And cash is the lifeblood of any small business. So it's really, really important that your business doesn't run out of cash. The best thing to do is actually avoid cash flow problems. And I'm going to do another video on all the things you can do to be proactive about not running out of cash. But this video right now is for those of you who have run out of cash. And I just want to talk you through the 5 stages to fix this. So, step number 1, it's all about payment terms. This might not apply to your business, but if it does, you need to have a think about this. Payment terms are where you do a job for a customer and then you let them know that they can pay like in 7 days, in 30 days, 60 days, even 90 days. And unfortunately, there are some large businesses out there that really take advantage of small businesses, and what they do is they try and pay everything at the very last minute, and it causes issues up and down the supply chain. If you're the kind of business that's been strong-armed into giving your customers payment terms against their will, then you really need to have a think about this, because a lot of small business owners, they've just built this belief up in their mind that their customers won't actually work with them unless they give them these payment terms. And a lot of the time it's just not the case. And if you're doing a really good job for that customer and you go back to that customer and say, hey, you know what, we can't give you those 90-day payment terms anymore, we're going to have to reduce them to 30 days. Or actually, if you say, hey, we can't give you those 30-day payment terms, you're going to need to pay either a deposit up front or pay the whole amount on completion, then that's going to really help your cash flow issues. You might be thinking, well, if you go back and ask for, try and remove the payment terms you were giving them, they might leave as a customer. Yes, that could happen, but if your business fails, they'll definitely leave as a customer. So this is why it's not an easy step, but it's something you've really got to do. All right, let's talk about the second one. Okay, well, a lot of cash flow issues in small business actually are caused by ineffective pricing strategy. What does that mean? Well, you sell something for the wrong amount of money. And by selling that thing for the wrong amount of money, what happens is you can't actually make enough money to pay your suppliers, to pay your staff, and to make a living yourself. And because that's happened, once you've paid everyone, including yourself, your business doesn't really have any surplus cash available anymore. And a lot of the time, then your business becomes really vulnerable to emergencies and last minute issues that pop up. So really, what you've got to think about is if you're struggling with your cash flows at the moment, but you know you're working as hard as you can possibly work, and maybe the issue isn't as much linked to payment terms, or maybe it's both, then you've got to have a serious think about if you're charging the right amount of money. And one thing, and I'll do a whole other video on pricing as well, but just because the guy down the road or the woman down the road is charging the same as you're charging doesn't mean it's the right amount, because they could have cash flow issues that you don't know about and their business might be failing. So you don't want to copy someone who's potentially failing themselves. What you've got to really think about is working out a pricing strategy for your business and having a realistic think about what it actually costs you to deliver that product or service that you're going to deliver. Okay, let's look at our third point, right? Okay, and these are all sequential in my opinion, so you should really just start with payment terms first and then work your way down. But number 3 is essentially about the costs in your business. If you've essentially sorted out your pricing, your payment terms, and you realize actually the customer, and when you sort out your pricing, the chances are you'll lose some customers anyway, which will create spare capacity in your business, or it'll free up capacity. So when you free up capacity, then what you sometimes find is actually your costs are higher than they need to be. So what you could actually find is, if you've sorted your pricing out and you've lost some customers, then you may end up with members of staff that don't necessarily have enough work to do. That's a very sad place to be, especially if they're good members of staff. But in the end of the day, if your business fails, you won't have any staff anyway, and you won't have any customers, and you won't have any problems potentially afterwards. In the run-up, it'll be awful. Anyway, the costs. So once you sort out your pricing, then it's time to actually look at what costs in your business are generating enough value for your business, and the ones that are surplus. And sometimes, unfortunately, it can be members of staff. Sometimes it could be all these subscriptions that you signed up to over the years, which you don't really need. And there could be multiple other costs in your business that, once you actually think about them and think about, if I took this away, would anyone notice? If I could I replace that thing with that thing and just get the exact same result, or a good enough result? And once you've been through that, you can actually reduce your costs. And because you've reduced your costs, then that's when you're going to be able to then go and balance your books and get healthier cash flows, because you'll have less going out. All right, let's look at the fourth point. And the fourth point is essentially the money you're taking out of your business. So sometimes business owners, they get into cash flow issues because they just take too much money out of the business. If the business is not at a point where it's making enough money and you take too much money out of your business, then you are really going to struggle to pay your bills and to make your business work on a financial level. You might be sitting there thinking, well, I've got to feed my family, I've got to put a roof over their heads, and so I've got to take the money I take. And to some extent, you might be right about that. But what you've got to remember is, your problems aren't necessarily the business problems, and the business's problems shouldn't always be your problems. And you've got to create that separation. I'm not by any means saying, okay, starve your family and become homeless. What I'm saying is, if you're in a position where essentially you've got to take more money out of the business than it can actually sustain, then what you've got to really think about is, can you arrange some other method of funding in your personal life, which means that you don't have to take as much money out of the business, and as a result, you don't put as much pressure on the business. So sometimes you can't help that point number 4, but it does make sense to actually just think about, is your personal situation actually impacting the business, and is there a better way to deal with that personal situation rather than putting all that pressure on your business? Okay, now let's talk about point number 5. Right. If you've essentially done all of that stuff, as in you looked at your payment terms, you looked at your pricing, you looked at your costs, and then you've also thought about what you're taking out of your business in terms of owner funds, then the 5th thing that you can really think about and do is essentially get some kind of funding for your business. So if you, one of the challenges of having cash flow problems is that there's a saying in the business world: people will lend to you when you don't need it, and people won't lend to you when you do. So one of the other videos I've got in this series will really talk about why you need to think about cash flow problems before they arise and how to be proactive about them, because when you're proactive about cash flow problems, it's a lot easier to solve them before they actually happen. But if you're in a position where you've got a serious cash flow problem and you've done all the other things, then the last thing you can really do is try and raise some kind of funding, because it might be that you've done all the other things, but the impact of those won't kick in straight away, and you may need a few months of support from a cash flow perspective to actually balance the books for those months, and survive for those months, so then you can prosper later. A lot of the time, if your business isn't in the healthiest place from a cash flow point of view, then it can be hard to get a loan. Loans are typically the best kind of funding you can get. But if you're struggling to get a loan at that point, there's other things you can do. Like, you can get credit cards, you can get overdrafts, you can get invoice financing, and there are other avenues you can go down. I'm not talking about loan sharks, obviously, but it's really important to remember that, because in the end of the day, while a loan is preferable because the interest rates are much lower and the fees are a lot lower, if you're in a position where your business is probably going to fail, but you know that if you can just bridge a gap for a few months, then any kind of funding really can save you. The key thing about getting short-term funding with high interest rates and high setup fees is you just got to have a solid plan to fix things, because if you don't have that plan, then getting short-term funding is all that's going to do is just going to prolong the issues that you're going to have. So once you've got a plan in place and you looked at the first 4 points, it may be that you just got to think about the fifth thing, which is to actually just bridge that gap with the finances by getting some sort of short-term finance. So what I'll do is just a quick recap of the points we covered. So we're talking about having a look at your payment terms to see if you're being too generous with your customers, thinking about the pricing to see if you're actually charging the right amount for your products. Then we're talking about essentially looking at your cost base, because if you sort your pricing out and payment terms out, you might have lost some customers, so you might be able to free up some costs and save money there. And then fourth, think about the money you're actually taking out of the business and if it's necessary to take out that much, or if there's a better way to fund yourself through these cash flow problems. And then fifth, it is all about finding the right kind of funding to bridge that gap until you can make your business profitable again. So what I just want to say is, if you found this video useful, remember to like, share, follow and subscribe, but because we've got lots of really good content coming up. But also what I'd like to do is just invite you to a free strategy meeting with myself. So all you have to do is go to our website, naccounting.co.uk, and then you can actually book yourself in for a strategy meeting with myself. So if you are struggling with cash flow issues, if there's anything in these videos that really resonates with your business and you just need some help getting through it, then that strategy meeting will be your lifeline, because we can actually start putting a bit of a plan together to actually get you moving forward and in the right direction. All right, thanks for watching. I'll see you at the next video.